Okay, the cannon is being fired. Okay. Alright, so the cannonball is being fired. Do you see the parabola that would kind of follow the path of that parabola? Okay. Now, what do we know about parabolas? Parabolas have a domain. What's the domain of a parabola? That opens up or down. In this case, it opens down. What's the domain? All real numbers, right? Now, does that make sense for this cannonball? Okay. Could we have every negative time in the world be, like, those would represent numbers before the cannonball was shot. Alright, so this is actually time 0, right here where the cannonball was fired. So theoretically, there's the parabola would come down here and hit the x-axis at a negative time. That does not make sense for this particular situation, does it? So there's going to be two answers, and one of them is going to be thrown away because it doesn't make sense. Only the positive one will be kept. I should probably know that. Only positive solution is good. I mean, hopefully that makes sense to you. I mean, in the graphing perspective here, we basically have our y-axis and our x-axis. The only one that's going to make sense is this one over here. Now, up on the chalkboard, I have written down some information, which some of it is familiar to you. It should already be in your notes. But the other part, maybe not. So, this part up here, b squared minus 4ac being the discriminant, that answers some of the questions in this set of notes. What kind of questions does it answer? It answers questions like this. How many solutions are there? So if you are looking at a question that says how many solutions are there, that is answered by the discriminant. If it says this, does it reach? Like what if this cannonball question says, does it reach a height of 1,000 feet? Or in this case, meters, I guess. What would you put over here if I was asking about 1,000 meters? What would you put in here for the height if I was asking about 1,000 meters? When I put 1,000 in? But before you can use the quadratic formula, we know that it has to be set equal to 0, so what would you do with that 1,000? You'd move it over, you subtract it to the other side. Okay? You don't need to do that in this question because they didn't ask me about the height of 1,000 feet. What did they ask me about? The height of the... What is the height of the ground? What number would you assign to the height of the ground? 0, thank you very much. Well, that's nice because that means I don't have to do anything more before I go into this process. But if this question is not about how many times does the cannonball hit the ground, if it's not about does it reach a height of 1,000 meters, if it's more about when is that happening, if the question is asking you to solve or what are the solutions, or in this case, when does it hit the ground, then you have to do the whole quadratic formula. You have to do step 1 and step 2. So, you need your calculator because you're not going to be able to do this without a calculator. Find your discriminant first. And then keep going. We end up with for that one. Okay, holding. I'm in a holding pattern. higher than that? 792.33. You are correct. Okay, make sure you got all those negatives in there because that might change things if you didn't. Okay, keep going now that you know your discriminants. Do the rest of your quadratic formula. No, because of this plus 9.8 in the end, that right there shifted the whole parabola up. You don't have to worry about it. I understand what you did. Right, so what I truthfully would do for this question, I would type this on my calculator. Okay, then I would get the interval, the equal. And then I would get divide, because it'll say insert divided by. So the insert feature makes sure that I don't have to type all that stuff out. Okay, and then I would probably do 2 times negative 4.9 in the interval again. So this will give you one of your solutions. Then you repeat this process and change that solution. There's really only 2 steps on your calculator. Sure. You grab a sheet. Yes. Okay. You have to do both. Now, the truth of the matter is, in this situation, there is only one you really have to do because the other one is just going to take the number in the end. Now, I'm going to talk about that. But at this point, if you don't know which one it is, then you need to do both. Now, I wrote up there the calculator instructions for one moment. Then you would just need to change it for the negative. Hold on, let me. If you're trying to do the division, make sure there's parentheses around that whole thing on the bottom. Okay. What happens when you do the plus? When you do the plus. Okay. When you typed in the plus, negative 24.5 plus, radical 792.33 all over that denominator, what did you get? Should be a negative number. I got negative 0.37 seconds. Okay, I can type it out. A couple of you have borrowed my calculator, so let me see if I can find another one. All right. Negative 24.5.
plus the square root of 792.33 gives me this value. Then when I divide by parenthesis 2 times negative 4.9, I end up with negative 0.37. Now, is that the good one or the bad one? That's the bad one. That's the one that doesn't make any sense, that some of you are ignoring me right now and will put on the test because you think that's a possible answer. For which I will be cringing inside, going, why didn't they listen to me when we talked about that being before the cannonball was fired? Maybe I should just take off half credit for people who don't listen to me on that question. I mean, if you get the other one right, that's good news. But some people just ignore me. Not sure why. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to change that to a minus sign. Okay, yeah, the newer style graphing calculators allow you to go up and hit the enter button. For those of you with the scientific calculator, like the blue one, yes, that Ms. Reynolds is holding, you can actually, I think you can go up, not sure if how many instructions or if it's just one, I can't remember. Okay? Yeah, and then you can change that to a minus so you don't have to retype the whole thing. And I wonder if I could do this. Boy, that would be really cool. Oh, my goodness, yes. And if I do that again, I end up with 5.37 seconds, which makes sense that that's a positive number, which is after the cannonball is fired. Have to do the division in order to get the final answer. Now I'm looking. Now let me see if I can answer your question. Okay. There are some of you that are going to understand what I'm saying right now, and it will save you some time. Okay. You obviously know that one of these answers is one of these numbers, right? Okay. So let's just think about which one is the waste of your time. All right. When you take let's do this one, a negative number, and you subtract the number. What kind of number do you get out of the negative? You know that's going to be negative, right? 2 times negative 4.9, is that positive or negative? So we have a negative, and we're dividing by a negative. That ends up being positive. That's good. All right, now, when you take a negative and add a value to it, this is the one that's going to be messed up. This is the one that's not going to work. So if you know that ahead of time, you're doing this cannonball example, this one is the one you can skip, right? So, if you see that, great. If you don't see it and you do end up solving for both of them and then crossing one of them off, that's fine too. I'm just saying, if you see that one of them is going down the wrong, is obviously going to give you a negative number, you can skip it. I'm okay with that. Okay, now, did that help answer your question? Okay, so I wanted to make sure that somebody else was asking a similar question, so. Okay, so we ended up with 5.37 seconds. That one was not good. This one was the only one that made sense. If you decided to write 5.4, you showed me all the work and then you rounded it to the tenths place, even though that problem says round to the hundredths. I don't care. It's okay. Rounding is, as long as you're going to round it correctly and show me the work, I'm not going to argue with you about whether you rounded to the tenths or the hundredths. If you rounded to the thousands, fantastic. Just do it right. Okay? I got bigger fish to fry than whether you round to the tenths or the hundredths. Okay, this one says determine how many x-intercepts this function has. Is that a discriminant question or the entire quadratic formula? Is it just a discriminant only question or is it the entire quadratic formula? just a discriminant question. So find your discriminant for me. B squared minus 4AC. Oh, sorry, yeah. Find your discriminant. Exactly, B squared minus 4 times A times C. How many donuts are in 6 dozen? 12 donuts are in 6 dozen? Whoa. You obviously should not be a police officer. Oh, sorry, we're recording. 72, thank you very much. 4 minus 72 gives me how much? Negative 68. Now, before I continue with this question, speaking of donuts. Okay, recently I was in Chicago. If you get a chance to go to Chicago, anybody been to the Do It Right donut store? Do it right. No, Do It Right Donuts. Anybody been there before? Next time you go to Chicago, Do It Right Donuts. Now, not only are the donuts amazing, okay, but they also serve like chicken, right? Okay, so they do like breaded chicken. You know, you can actually get. So here's the cool part. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to do it next time. You could choose the donut that you want. Have them cut it in half. Put the chicken inside, and then you got a donut chicken sandwich. I was like, brilliant! Who are these people? No, I would not put any sauce. Like, I mean, I couldn't do mustard. I mean, normally I would do mustard on my chicken sandwich, but I think that with, no, I couldn't do that. No. No. Although we are getting Portillo's in the mall from Chicago, and I'm very happy about that. We go once a year. As a family, we take 1 weekend a year to go. It's fun. I like Gino's East a little bit better than Giordano's. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Crust, it's the crust. The pizza part is good. I like that. Okay, question 12. Is this another discriminant question, or is it the whole quadratic formula? It says how many x-intercepts? Just the discriminant. B squared minus 4AC. Looks like 9 plus 9 dozen donuts, man. 108. Not that I eat 9 dozen donuts. I'm not saying that's how I know the number. Okay, so what do we get? Come on, what do we get? 1. Somebody set it up there. 117. Thank you very much. Interpret it. I don't think we interpreted the last one. Whoops. Did I mess up the window? Okay, we never interpreted the last one because I went off on my donut tangent. Okay, so on the first one, 11, we got negative 68. What does that mean in terms of the answer? I would accept 0 x-intercepts. What one word would I also accept? No x-intercepts. I told you that I would accept either one of those. Okay, so interpret what you see in question 12 instead of just talking to yourselves. It's a positive number, which means 2 x-intercepts. Thank you. Like TWO? Yeah. As long as he didn't be like 20200. TOO. Okay, we're going to skip 13 through 16 for a moment because they are review. I want to jump down to 17. Jump down to 17. We'll go back to those other review questions here in a second. Does this question require just the discriminant or the entire quadratic formula? What do you got? Is it just the discriminant or the entire quadratic formula? Okay, folks, this is the entire quadratic formula. Or, hey, did they tell me how I had to solve it? Is there another way to solve this besides the quadratic formula? Okay, so, got a cheater back there. Don't have to. Hey, I showed you another way to handle this one, which it doesn't require that you use this method. So, if you can't remember the one I'm describing to you right now, you could use the quadratic formula.
Isn't it the one where you equal to 0?
The factoring, you could factor this. Nothing says which way you have to do this. If you want to factor this, factor it. If you want to use a quadratic formula, use that one. Choose right now and do one of those methods. You can do the quadratic formula, but this one has nice enough numbers that we can actually factor. There's no GC up, so you can go straight to your two sets of parentheses. So choose your favorite method. This is how those grades go. Okay. What period? What period is this? Okay. So I missed today. So this is for second period. Let's see here. This is the 21st. 10:21. Okay. All right. Well, let me see if I can catch up to you. Okay, the first thing I'm going to try here is factoring, and then I'll switch to the quadratic formula if that was your preferred method. So what does this factor into? N and N. Positive 9 and negative 7, right? Because their product would be negative 63, but their sum would be positive 2. Okay, so that's good. Now, what's the solution that we get from this one? Negative 9, that is true, right? You set the factor equal to 0 and solve, if you don't remember. How about the other one? Positive 7. So the two answers should have been negative 9 and positive 7. Now, if you didn't like the factoring idea, which you know that on your next test there will be factoring questions that you will be required to do that method with, but this doesn't ask you to do that. You could use the quadratic formula. So, if we do the other method, we would have b squared minus 4 times a times c. My discriminant would be 256. Okay? So if I continue the process, I have the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of 256 all over 2 times 1. Now the square root of 256 is 16. So one of my answers is going to look something like that one, and the other one is going to look something like this one. What is negative 2 plus 16? So we've got positive 14. And what is 14 divided by 2? 7. And then the other one would be negative 18 over 2, negative 9. So I don't care whether you use the quadratic formula or factoring. Now, I will say this. I do think that one method is a little bit easier than the other in this case. But you can't always factor things. Not everything is factorable.
So that's why you have to have the quadratic formula as a backup plan. How did you guys figure out why you guys were doing it?
Well, I did a separate parentheses as a parentheses.
If you're trying to do it all in one giant step, then you have to have parentheses around that whole numerator. This whole numerator has to have parentheses. Then divide it by 2. Now, if you look at what I wrote up there, I hit the enter button after I did the numerator.
This was the Cannonball example. For the Cannonball example, when I did the numerator, I hit the enter button for the equal sign. Then I did the division by the denominator. So if you do it separately, you're not going to mess it up. You're trying to do it all in one giant line, which is fine as long as you put parentheses in the right spots. So if you're trying to do it all in one giant leap, you have to do this. Parentheses divided by parentheses.
So I have a question. So you know how certain equations have like parentheses already? So okay, if it's x, y, parentheses, whatever. So if it were like 6 parentheses 6x plus 10.
Right after you're talking about the discriminant.
I'm just talking about like for example, like inserting
Kind of like what I was doing there with the 256. Where I've got all those parentheses there. Is that what you mean?
no like like
Did you get 256 from the discriminant?
I did, but I forgot the negative and so it gave me positive
Yes.
9.
Okay. Just make sure you write it out before you type it on the calculator. The reason I say that is because
Sometimes kids go straight to the calculator and make a typing mistake. So please make sure you're look at the amount of work that's done on the quadratic formula. If you make a mistake on a calculator, I can give you the majority of the credit because I knew that you knew what you were doing. And I know that'll bug you, but show that work. Just because you if you show your work and then something happens with the calculator, that's a minor thing. Okay? So just show your steps and you'll get most of the credit. Okay, go back to 13. Go back to 13. What is the vertex? What is the vertex on question 13? Please make sure you're on the notes page. Going back to question 13, don't go ahead to the practice section, but go to the notes page. You should have a question that looks exactly like this one. Can you tell me what the vertex is by looking at that? I got a -4, 1. Do you agree or disagree with that? Is it backwards on what you see on the inside of the parentheses and exactly what you see on the outside? Yes, it is. Okay? Graph it. Go find your vertex on the graph and use your 1A, 3A method of graphing to do this. This is all old stuff, so it shouldn't take you too long. Well, this won't necessarily be on this. This was on the last test, so this will not be on the next test. I'm just trying to practice a few things in our remaining minutes.
so negative 4, 1. Hopefully you have a dot for your vertex. Okay, so what's your A value? What's 3 times that amount? We remember that we did the 1A, 3A method of graphing. So when I move to the right, 1 unit, how far down do I drop? Sorry. Drop down 2. And when I move right 1 more, how far do I drop? 6. Did I do that too far? I went too far. Man, that's horrible. Can't trust that guy. Down 2 and then down 6. Yeah. Okay, then of course you're going to jump across the axis of symmetry and graph those other points on the other side, right? Because we know we have a matching point on either side. And then we can draw the oh man, I messed it up. So we use our 1A, 3A method just as a review. What is the axis of symmetry here? X equals negative 4. Please make sure you quote it as a vertical line. And does this have a minimum or a maximum? Which one is this? This is a maximum, and it is a maximum. What is that y value? 1 at negative 4. That's true. The maximum is positive 1 at negative 4. What's the range of this question? What is the range? Remember how we talked about smashing the whole thing up against the y-axis? Push it all up against the y-axis. What would that range be? Say that. It's not all real numbers. Okay? You said it's a max of 1, so it starts at 1 and it goes down. So how do I say that? Y is less than or equal to positive 1. We said the max was 1, so it has to be smaller than or equal to that.